Hey, Matt Priest here for another edition of Kicks Over Coffee, where we have casual conversations about footwear. My guest today is Rick Muskat, who's principal at Deer Stags, based in New York, a family-owned, multi-generational footwear importer. Rick, as much as I love having casual conversations with you, our conversations these days are anything but casual because there's a lot that we're facing. Wanted to touch base with a family importer like Deer Stags with a long, proud history to talk about the impact you're seeing from the coronavirus, and maybe we can explore some tidbits together that might be helpful for other companies out there that are facing the same crisis.
Well, I'm happy to answer any specific questions you have. At the risk of stating the obvious, I don't think any of us have ever encountered anything like this before.
Right.
To put it into some family perspective, you talked about multi-generational. So, my father and uncle started our company. My 3 kids, 2 of my nephews now work and depend on the company for their livelihood. And I remember, I guess it was 6 or 7 years ago, my mother, just shortly before she passed, was sitting and so worried and concerned about the state of the world and worried for her grandchildren, for my children and their children.
Right.
Her great-grandchildren. And I used to say to her, I don't understand, Ma, you grew up in the Depression, you got married and sent your husband off to fight World War II for 3 years. You didn't know from one day to the next if he was alive or what. And you're worried about the world that your grandchildren and great-grandchildren are growing up in. And here we are. Yeah. It's different than those, but not all. We don't know what to project, but listening to some of the people talking on the news, we could be living through something. We are living through something I think none of us have ever seen. How you plan your life is one thing. How you plan your business, which is, I guess, what you want to hear me talk about a little bit, in an area where virtually all the stores we sell to are closed. Having just come through a trade war where we were trying to manage the unknown of what the goods are going to cost, and then facing coronavirus in China where no shoes were being made for 4, 5, 6 weeks on top of Chinese New Year, struggling through the production or supply side, and finally getting the factories up and working. And now we don't know what's going to happen on the demand side. We spent last week, and I give my daughter Jenny credit for this, is she came to me early last week and said, Dad, we got a plan for work from home because they could be shutting this down, and social distancing, a phrase I had never heard before, and had to be reminded several times what those words were because I was unfamiliar with them. So she took the lead and organized the acquisition of a number of laptops and getting our IT group to get everybody set up with VPNs and be able to set up and work from home. And we announced to the company last Thursday in a rush announcement, not the way I would have liked to have done it, but with time running short, that this was going to be the plan. The plan was to have everybody work from home this week, to get used to it, see how it works, see how we could function. And then the hope was for next week to go to split shifts, team A working one week, team B the following week.
Right.
But that's down the drain. Now we'll work from home for the foreseeable future. It is the right thing to do. Social distancing clearly is the one weapon we have and have a responsibility to combat the spread of the virus. The great news for me is that our team, and most of them, we're a small team, but they are so dedicated, and they're having team meetings by Zoom video. We're learning how to do. We're exchanging. We're also, by the way, in the middle of our annual audit, our accounting firm.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's gotta be a bear.
So Steve Palmer, who is now doing a remote audit with the independent accounting firm, BDO, that does our audit. That's another first. We're having our buy meetings, which is interesting. We have 3 buy meetings scheduled with our planning and sales team for next week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're buying for what demand, what and when.
Right.
So one of the things, and you'll appreciate this, one of our great members of FDRA and one of our leaders, Josue Solano, who was on the call yesterday.
Yeah.
I reached out to him after our call because we were having we had some questions about vendor setup with a new customer we recently opened. And I know they do business. I called Josue. He called us back today and gave Jenny and I all the information we needed to help answer our questions. But before we got into that part of the conversation, he was asking me, how are you going about modeling your cash flow? How are you modeling your inventory? How are you anticipating demand? You know, all the stores that are closed do have most of their spring merchandise in because it's the middle of March.
Right.
But they're not selling any of it.
Right.
So when they reopen, hopefully they do reopen, and I'm afraid some of them will not. There are any number of retailers who were struggling to begin with before we got to this phase. How they weathered this storm financially is questionable. But the ones that do open, how are they going to liquidate the spring merchandise? Spring selling is a short season. And every day, let alone every week, or however many weeks you lose to sell through that merchandise, how are they managing? So how are we managing?
Right.
I really don't know. My brother and I, who take our responsibility for our whole team very seriously, and we consider them all family. We've been spending the last 2 days looking at cash flow. Mm-hmm. What are our projections? How do we revise the projections? How do we hold on to cash to be able to weather the storm? Been speaking to our bankers. They've been very supportive. Fortunately, we have great relationships.
Yeah.
But some good, encouraging news came out this afternoon. I don't know if you saw it, but New York Times sent an article that President Trump has presented to Congress a very aggressive stimulus package.
Yeah.
That includes, if it passes, it includes, if I read the article correctly, if the article reported the news correctly. I'm not putting slide on any publication, but
sure.
It appears that it's going to help cover about 6 weeks of payroll for small companies under 500 people. We qualify for that.
Yep.
If it's correct, it'll cover 6 weeks as long as we are all prepared to cover an additional 2. So I guess that buys us 8 weeks.
Right.
If the case, that answered the first question I woke up to this morning. How am I going to cover payroll? You know, we are a company, and a company is what other than a group of people who get together for a common purpose.
That's right.
So without the people, there's nothing to talk about. And so obviously our first concern, both for our business's sake, but also for their sake, is how do we keep them afloat? What are the right things to do? So
yeah.
Long-winded. Sorry.
No. There's so much to unpack there. I really appreciate that thoughtful answer. One of the things we're focused on and engaging Secretary Mnuchin and the Trump administration on is maybe the ability, one, either to roll back tariffs that went into effect on the industry in September on top of what we already pay. So our tariff bill is typically about $3 billion. It's going to be $3.9 billion because of the new tariffs on an annualized basis. So rolling some of those back and maybe even creating the opportunity to delay duty payments upwards of 90 days to help take care of the cash flow issue that you talked about. But as we look at the ways in which companies are changing how they do business, Rick, one of the things you and I have talked about offline is how you really gravitate towards, and as do I, those random encounters at the water cooler, those opportunities to engage with people face to face on an ongoing basis. And for small operations, that's so key, I think. Of all the changes that you and Jenny and others have implemented during this crisis, do you think you'll hold on to some of them for continued normal operating business strategies, or will you kind of revert back to the old ways of doing business? Talk to me about how you're thinking post-coronavirus for operations.
I love the question because I love the idea of post-coronavirus.
Yeah.
So let's work on the very optimistic assumption that is, we will be looking at that. And as I said to you in my email last night, when we look back on this, one of the things we have to thank is FDRA for creating a community. I said it to you yesterday, but for anybody else who's interested, that call yesterday with over 70 shoe executives on a Zoom video conference, this gave me so much comfort. We didn't talk about any of the things that you had anticipated when you set up the call.
That's for sure.
Supposed to be discussing supply chain issues as a result of coronavirus. Instead, we talked about how do we deal with the reality that we confronted with today. And just knowing that we're all in the same boat and that we can exchange and share ideas is critical. So, that's part of my answer to you. This Zoom video conferencing or any form of virtual sharing amongst groups of people,
yeah,
I'm sure will continue. I mean, we had set up various work from home privileges for a number of our team, especially those with very long commutes, just to make life easier and better for them. We set up work from home for some of the young moms that we have on our team so that they can deal with their childcare and yet still be productive and give them the opportunity to take care of their kids and still do the work they have to do.
Right.
One of the things that Michael and I talked about is we're learning new ways. So if there's a silver lining, if there's, an opportunity this problem is presenting, it's learning these new ways and how do we incorporate these new ways in how we do business going forward. On the Fanny call, which I know you were on about whether or not to delay the start of the June Fanny show.
Yeah.
Everybody said, we're not sending any of our people over to the factories in China to do development, but we have to do development. So we're going to do it by video chatting and email and sending files of drawings of pictures, whatever level of technology you're at. But, we will make it work because that's what we have to do. We have to figure a way to make it work. And once we learn new ways to make it work, I'm sure we'll come out of this with maybe some new efficiencies. Do we have to spend as much on travel? Do we have to put our people out there and away from home for so long? Can we accomplish more with technology? On the other hand, we have to keep those random collisions going because the best ideas generally come from unintended conversations.
That's very true.
So we want to have the in-person. Right now, we have to keep social distancing. So in-person is going to be like this. Getting a group of us together to video chat, and see where it takes us.
Yeah, let me ask you this on the sales side. We obviously know when stores close down, that crushes demand, obviously. And knowing that there's not a panacea out there on the e-commerce side, there's only so much growth that we can see on the e-commerce. But starting this week, we've seen a surge in e-commerce sales for those reporting into our weekly sales survey. Do you have expectation that obviously you won't pick up all of your lost sales during this time, but do you expect a surge of some sort for Deer Stags product online? Absolutely.
Well, first of all, I think the web channel has been not only the fastest growing part of our business as it is for most.
Yeah.
It now outpaced, before the coronavirus, it outpaced brick and mortar for us. Now, that might mean our brick and mortar business isn't as strong as it needs to be, because on a percentage basis, you need the denominator. But our web channel has been phenomenally strong. And aside from its growth as a percent of total, our growth on the web has significantly outpaced the industry's growth on the web.
That's great.
We look just at the orders we received today. We have a lot of drop ship partners, so they sell all day, every day. And we sold more shoes online today than we did last Wednesday, just comparing what's today's Wednesday? We sold more Tuesday this week than last Tuesday.
Got it.
We get the full report Wednesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So that was before the stores closed. So we expect this week, well, that was, Tuesday was with stores closed, and by today, almost all the stores are closed. Of course, Amazon has done a shift, as you probably know.
Yeah.
They have, while they were very aggressive to deal with the impact of the supply disruption by going in early over the last couple of weeks and pulling as much inventory as they can in anticipation of the supply disruption. Now they've gone, and in order to increase their ability to serve household emergency needs, they've diverted all their attention to that while they try to hire this 100,000 people. So we watch their sales online. We get their reports every day what they're selling of our shoes, but right now they stopped ordering.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Right.
I think for 3 weeks, they said. So,
Well, it's something to keep an eye on. I know, this is, as you know, we've been on these calls where we've seen China come kind of back into normalcy from the production perspective just to face this drop in demand on the US side. And I feel like it's passing through the eye of a hurricane. You know, I've been in a number of hurricanes, and as you enter into the eye, as the eye goes over you, this you can see the sky, it's blue as can be, and or you can see the stars out at night, and then the moment you enter in that other side of the wall, the eye wall, it's all pandemonium again. And I just feel like that's what we've gone through, because we had that one side of the back of the front side of the storm was the production side in China, and we seem to have gotten through that, and now we're facing this dramatic drop in demand on our side. And I just don't know how long that outer wall of the hurricane, how deep that is and how long it'll take to get through.
none of us know. There's no way to project. It depends on, as Dr. Fauci, if I'm pronouncing his name correct,
Mm-hmm.
if under the leadership he and the administration have been putting forward, and in our case, Governor Cuomo and the governors of every state, I know they're being aggressive. They have increased the level of aggressiveness. Unfortunately, on a personal level, you hate what we have to do by self-isolating.
Right.
But it sounds to me, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, it's the only weapon we have.
That's right.
It depends if we can blunt that curve and get it going on the other side. If not, we're going to be locked in for a long time. Stores are going to be closed for a long time.
Yep.
And who knows?
Well, let's close this conversation out on something that you're doing to stay sane as you social distance. Are you reading more? Are you doing, tell me something. Are you doing crossword puzzles? What is it? What tip can you provide our viewers as to something that's helping you stay sane in a time we have to social distance?
So I think, I have a workout routine every single morning. I've been going to the gym for 20 odd years,
Right.
and increasing the amount of time I spend there. And of course, the gym is closed. Not that my family would let me continue to go, even plan to continue to go, because that is my source of sanity. I have now this week been developing a workout routine at home. I'm keeping to the same schedule. For me, I need the routine. I'm getting up at the same time, doing my morning coffee, reading the paper, having some toast, getting ready, spending an hour and a half working out. I'm fortunate that we moved out to our beach house, A, to get away from the city, and B, to have a little more space, and C, to have the outdoors, because there's no problem social distancing. I keep trying to remember the phrase.
Me too.
On the beach in the wintertime.
Right.
Nobody there. I'm riding my bike on the boardwalk, no matter how cold it is, and it's getting my heart rate up. And I'm saying to myself, I'm luckier than most because I can do this. And by the time I come in to face all the questions and all the challenges, I got those endorphins going, and that helps me a lot. And you can tell Lisa, by the way, that I'm using a lot of what I learned in Pilates to keep my body alignment going. That's what I'm doing indoors. My indoor work has become a lot of this Pilates stretching and movements and trying to remember, because then I come and sit at this desk all day trying to answer emails and figure out, what am I going to say?
Right. Well, I think you're right. I think routine is important. And Rick, I can't thank you enough for getting on the program today to kind of walk us through how you're feeling about these things, how you're thinking about them. You're one of the most thoughtful people I know, and I mean that with all sincerity. And to be able to capture this conversation on camera for a broader audience is really important. So thank you for joining Kicks Over Coffee and sharing a cup of coffee with me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Matt, for all the work you guys do. And you know I really mean it. I think I said to you in my email last night, what would this industry be like without what FDRA provides? And what it's currently providing was not in the original mission statement.
I appreciate that. Folks, this has been another episode of Kicks Over Coffee. Make sure you head to kicksovercoffee.com to get a variety of different episodes focused on the coronavirus, the Canadian retail market, sustainability, innovation, retail sales, and import numbers. We've been covering it all over the past few weeks, so check it out. And we look forward to catching up with you on the next edition of Kicks Over Coffee. Have a great day.
Stay safe.